Everybody, welcome to room 227, West Claremont High School. I'm Mr. Agrippa, your anatomy teacher, and today we're going to be going over the final cat organ lab practical and all of the organs that will be on your list for that practical. So, warning right now, there will be some graphic cat dissection footage coming up, so just keep that in mind as you continue. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. We are going to begin with the internal organs of the cat. I'll get my list set out here and make sure I don't forget anything. Okay, so we'll start with this little girl here. We'll start at the top and work our way down. So on your list, you are going to see the trachea. Make sure we're on camera here. All right, so this is the trachea, this tube that comes down through the throat right here and sitting up on top of the trachea. You can see the larynx. You can see where the cartilage gets thicker. You have this darker color. So we can see the cartilaginous rings that are in the trachea. And then here you see this darker part up on top. And that is the larynx or voice box for the cat. I guess you could call it the meow box for the cat. The trachea comes on down and will branch inside here and go to the bronchial tubes, which will go into the right and left lungs. So this is a lung, and the other side is a lung right here, both with multiple lobes. Centered in between the lungs, we have the heart, which is a much smaller version of what we've seen before in the sheep heart in one of the other videos. So that should be pretty easy to identify. And on this cat, we've removed the pericardium, which is this protective lining right here. So some of the cats still have the pericardium intact. This cat, we've removed the pericardium so we can get a better look at the heart. While we're up here, I'll take the scalpel and I will trim some of this tissue back so that we can see the nice pretty blue vena cava. All right, so we have, maybe the GoPro's got a good look at that one right there. So the vena cava is this superior vena cava, would be this large blue tube right here. All right, so we'll tip it to this camera, make sure we get a good look. That would be this blue tube right here. And while we're talking about vena cava, let's come down here to the bottom, and we will find the inferior vena cava, which would be the big blue tube directly underneath the heart down in here. Let me turn this so I can see the screen a little better. There we go. All right. So, review real quick. Got trachea, larynx, superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, heart, and the lungs. The other major blood vessel that we have to identify is the aorta, and the easiest place to see the aorta is to pull the lung back, and it will be this big tube running right down the spine right here, and it is an artery, so it will be dyed pink. You can see some of the pink dye here. You can also see a lot of the pink dye going away from or leaving the aorta and heading towards the spine. So the reason this isn't very pink is because the aorta is a very thick-walled artery, and it's hard for that pink color to shine through because of how thick the artery wall is. Down here, the muscle that controls breathing will be the diaphragm, and that's going to be this guy right here. It's in between the heart, lungs, and the liver, and this is the muscle wall right here, the diaphragm. Again, part of the respiratory system that controls breathing. Moving on down through the body, all of this organ mass right here, this is the liver, okay? And so you have 1, 2, 3, 4 lobes, large lobes, and some smaller lobes of liver over here. And nestled in between the lobes of the liver, we have the gallbladder, and that would be this greenish colored membranous sac right here. This is the gallbladder, and you can see the bile duct as it comes down. These are both accessory organs to the digestive system. Remember, the liver makes bile and the gallbladder stores the bile. Moving down into the body, we have the stomach. It would be this J-shaped organ right here, and right here as the tube that runs into the stomach would be the esophagus. And we can clean this up a little bit. I can trim some of this diaphragm away. And we make the esophagus a little easier to see. That would be this tube right here. So this big tube running down into the body, into the stomach. This would be the esophagus. At the bottom of the esophagus, tip that camera a little bit more here. Wrong way. There we go. At the bottom of the esophagus, closing off the stomach, would be the cardiac sphincter. So that keeps stomach juices and food contents from going back up into the esophagus, causing acid reflux. So again, we have the stomach. The tiny folds inside of the stomach are known as the rugae. They increase the stomach surface area, aiding in chemical breakdown of the food. And then we have the J-shaped section, the pylorus of the stomach. And right here we see this constriction of the pylorus connecting to the small intestine. So this would be the pyloric sphincter, keeping food in the stomach before it's ready to be moved on to the small intestine for absorption. Before we move on to the intestines, we'll identify the spleen, which is this organ right here. And underneath the stomach, this mass of tissue that goes from the spleen underneath the stomach, and then we'll make a turn and we'll tuck in the very beginning of the small intestine right here. This material lined in the mesentery is the pancreas. And if we can see that as it goes from here down and rides right along the underside of the small intestine. Again, that would be the pancreas. So all of this tissue here would be small intestine. Again, small intestine is named not for its length, but for the diameter of the muscular tube. This organ is divided into three sections. We have the duodenum, which is this beginning section that I'm holding right here off of the stomach. This beginning section, again, would be the duodenum. And once it makes the turn down at the bottom here, it no longer is considered the duodenum, it becomes the jejunum. So the middle section of the small intestine would be the jejunum. And then we find where it joins the colon or large intestine, and that would be right here. We can see there's a dead end little knuckle. That is the cecum of the large intestine, and you see the smaller tube here joins this bigger tube, and so this bottom portion would be the ileum. So when I go to pin this organ on the exam, I'm not going to try to trick anyone with the ileum. I'm going to pin the ileum about right here where it is very close to the large intestine, so there's no doubt that I'm discussing. I want you to identify the last part of the small intestine. So ileum of the small intestine, and then this would be the beginning of the large intestine. The dead end knuckle of the large intestine would be is called the cecum. And then this section, as it goes up towards the front of the body, is the ascending colon and of the large intestine. And then this part of the colon would be the descending colon as it goes down and out the body. So this deflated balloon looking organ here is the urinary bladder, and of course it is part of the urinary system. We come up here, everyone finds in their cat, and they automatically assume that it is a tumor. I hear that all the time. My cat has a tumor. This is not a tumor, in the words of Arnold. It's not a tumor. This is a kidney, and you'll find one just like it over here on this side. Here's another one. That is a kidney. And again, those are part of the urinary system. So you have the two kidneys. All right. So let's take a quick look at the list. Let's see what we are missing, if anything. mesentery, that's one. So the mesentery is all of this transparent membrane right here that holds all of the small intestine together. So you can see my fingertip, hopefully there. All of this membrane is the mesentery, and it holds all of the intestines in place. That'll be another one. So when I go to pin that one, it'll be tricky because the pin will go right through it as I am anchoring the pin into a different body part. So remember, when I'm looking for something, I will give you the direction that the first thing the pin goes through is what I'm after. So if I pin right through here, I'm looking for the mesentery. Even though the pin may stick into a different organ to keep it still, that's what I'm looking for. Okay. So let's go down the list. I believe that is pretty much everything that is on your lab practical. So pericardium, we talked about that. The sphincters, we got those covered. And I believe that is everything. This, as I mentioned earlier, this is a little female. And we know it's a female as we look internally, we can see the uterus. So this little tube right here is one side. A cat has what's called a horned uterus because it forks kind of like horns on an antelope or a gazelle. So this is one side of the uterus coming up here to the ovary. And then this tube, this little tube over here, is the other side of the uterus. So the presence of a uterus is a dead giveaway that this is a female. All right. The other dead giveaway would be the two openings at the back of the body there underneath the tail. Males only have the one visible opening. All right. So hopefully that will give you all that you need to walk you through studying for your cat organ practical. All right, that should about do it for the overview of the cat organ lab practical. Hopefully this video will help you prepare for the test and everyone will do very well. So, as always, thanks for watching. This is your anatomy teacher, Mr. Grippa, signing off. "50 years, so you think I'm gonna make it to 99 years old?"
Is this recording?
I don't. Yeah, it's recording. Yeah, you're gonna be great cameraman. And so I'm out there shooting, and he and my son, 8th grade or freshman year, whatever, was watching me shoot this.
Hey guys. Wait, is it recording? Yeah.
When the zombie apocalypse hits, I'm gonna make you captain of the zombie hunting team. Wait.
There's Jacob.
So so he goes, "Hey, I'm gonna
Say hey, guys.
So
Hey, guys.
And then as you heard,
So, yeah.
so this is where this.
I'm in anatomy class right
All right, hit play.
now. We're hitting play now.
Zombie apocalypse. We're going center of the head. That definitely would be the left hemisphere, don't you think? Yeah, the brain. That would not. Do some